Hello, my name is Christian Stewart, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about why I believe a new geologic time period should be added. This time period is commonly referred to as the Anthropocene era. Anthropocene is a term first used around the year 2000 to describe the current geological period by Nobel Prize winner Paul Crutzen. Anthropocene refers to an era dominated by humans. The geologic timescale is broken down into eons, eras, periods, epochs, and ages. We're currently in the eon Phanerozoic, which is marked by the introduction of larger animals. This is then broken down into three different eras: the Cenozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Paleozoic. The Paleozoic is the earliest, known as the Age of Fishes, which was followed by the Age of Dinosaurs, and according to the University of California Museum of Paleontology, the Age of Mammals, starting around 65 million years ago. According to this Museum of Paleontology, humans are inevitably going to be part of the fossil record, but the true meaning of Anthropocene is that we have affected nearly every aspect of our environment, from a warming atmosphere to an acidifying ocean. Now, the evidence for the Anthropocene era is that human activity has caused great changes to the world. Firstly, changes to physical sedimentation. There have been major increases in erosion due to construction and agriculture, and indirectly by damming most of the world's major rivers. Secondly, the carbon cycle perturbation and temperature changes. CO2 levels are over a third higher than pre-industrial times, and higher than at any time over the past 0.9 million years. Next, the biotic changes. Humans have caused extinctions of animals and plant species across the world, and decreases in biodiversity in favor of agricultural monocultures. Finally, ocean changes. There have been rise in sea levels, rise in sea temperatures, and rise in sea acidity. Now, there is some debate over whether the Anthropocene era is an ancient period or was started around 150 years ago with the Industrial Revolution. According to realclimate.org, there's a controversial discussion of whether early agriculture caused enough emissions of greenhouse gases millennia ago to offset a natural climatic cooling. The key argument here is found in ice cores that indicate rises in atmospheric carbon dioxide and methane, rather than decreases seen over the same time periods before. Another argument for the ancient onset of the Anthropocene period is according to Oregon State professor Tal Levi. Levi says, beginning around 50,000 years ago, the Quaternary megafauna extinction claimed more than two-thirds of mammalian genera, larger than 44 kilograms. This period saw many of the species that prey on humans become extinct, which allowed for humans to become such a dominant species on Earth. With the exception of humans, the mammals roaming on Earth today are generally much smaller and less of a threat to humans than they would have been 50,000 years ago. Today, the largest mammals in many terrestrial ecosystems are now medium-sized carnivores such as coyotes, as opposed to 50,000 years ago, which we may have seen large woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, etc. The decrease in the species that preyed on humans indicates their ancient rise to power thousands of years ago. According to National Geographic, our terrestrial transformations go back at least to the beginning of agriculture more than 10,000 years ago. Over the centuries, population growth and improved transportation have slowly driven humans to control ever-widening tracts of land, with grave consequences for the species and habitats there. This argument is focused more on a slow change over thousands of years, as opposed to the industrial outlook, which sees the Anthropocene as an era beginning around 150 years ago with the Industrial Revolution. Now, the Industrial Revolution has a sharp indication that a new geologic period has begun. The large increase in agriculture and population due to new technologies marked increases in greenhouse gases and human impacts on the Earth. While Levi explains the mass extinction of large mammals, he later says that few ecosystems now contain the assemblage of large vertebrates of only 150 years ago. So while over those 50,000 years, many saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths may have gone extinct, the changes over the last 150 years are also drastic in other large mammals. Author W.D. Rudiman, in the Annual Review of Earth and Planetary Sciences, says there is ample evidence of the widening impact human impacts have had on a variety of environmental variables since 1850. Soils have been deeply eroded, ecosystems fragmented, groundwater depleted, and coastal waters choked with algal blooms. Rudiman also cites ocean acidity, ozone depletion, and greenhouse gas concentrations as indicators of human activity's powerful impacts. Another important point is that more than 85% of the global population of humans, this increase to 7 billion, has occurred since 1850. So Rudiman's solution to this argument of whether the Anthropocene started thousands of years ago or whether it started 150 years ago, he suggests a two-phase era. So number one is an early phase with anthropogenic effects beginning on a small scale thousands of years ago, and followed by a later explosive phase of wide-ranging anthropogenic impacts during the Industrial Revolution. For much of human history, people existed very much in unison with the Earth. They were able to sustain themselves and survive without affecting the environment and other species for the most part. With the Industrial Revolution, humans were able to produce much more food and thus support much larger populations. This spike in population and in human activity created more of a demand for food, which led to overfishing and agriculture, which changed the landscape on Earth, and then humans negatively impacting biodiversity. The counterargument to the Anthropocene era is that humans' impact on Earth is not always harmful. National Geographic says parks, farmlands, and wilderness areas allow human use while preserving natural habitats, but our role in shaping the Earth is powerful, and the human footprints continue to expand. Scientific advancement has allowed us to reverse the depletion of the ozone layer. The University of California Museum of Paleontology says the Cenozoic has sometimes been referred to as the age of mammals. Well, if I'm suggesting an era which is dominated by humans, humans are in fact mammals, and there is no difference between an age dominated by mammals or more specifically by humans. Tal Levi takes the alternative view that humans are just another strongly interacting component within the larger community of species. In some cases, management actions informed by science can mitigate or reverse the negative anthropogenic environmental impacts. According to the Politics of the Anthropogenic in the Annual Review of Anthropology, the term anthropogenic takes its meaning from an implied contrast to an idealist notion of nature as separate from humans, and endowed with a timeless or cyclical equilibrium. My argument in favor of the Anthropocene period suggests that the gap between human and nature is drastically shrinking. Our effects on the timeless and cyclical equilibrium mentioned in the Review of Anthropology are massive. Later, in this journal article, it says, today, however, scientists contend, even on the grandest scale, most aspects of the structure and functioning of Earth's ecosystems can't be understood without accounting for the strong, often dominant influence of humanity. So simply because the human impact is not harmful doesn't make it unimportant. While science has allowed us to notice and reverse ozone depletion, it's likely that without emissions created by humans, the problem would have never arose in the first place. And management behaviors such as damming large rivers creates problems with erosion and drastically changes the physical and biological landscape. It blocks certain fish populations from spawning, and it causes changes in the natural flows of these rivers. Another point that may arise against this new era is that we are currently in the Cenozoic, which is referred to as the age of mammals. Humans are just more mammals, and thus doesn't mark a great enough change in what's going on Earth in order to mark a new era. I believe that humans have separated themselves from other mammals so much and have the ability to control other animal populations that an era mainly controlled by humans is what we are currently living in. In conclusion, I think the strongest argument is made for a new period, the Anthropocene. It's already widely recognized in geology as the current time period, and it should be adopted because humans now have control over many aspects of the workings of the Earth. Specifically through measures to control or minimize damage from natural disasters, like flooding or drought, humans are not affected by the geological changes in Earth as they once were. And through their major impacts on the biosphere, which are a result of our effects on climate and environment, humans were able to kill off any species that were a threat to them, and now are able to control the biosphere so much that they have opted for monocultures of large groups of one species to be grown on a large scale, which has affected the biodiversity of Earth and changed the balance of the biological aspect, which over time will change the geological features of the Earth. So the Anthropocene era is what I believe we are currently living in and should be widely recognized across geology. Thank you.